Hello YouTube and welcome to another video. Today I want to talk to you about Layla or Aisha and her power source and the fact that she has different powers in different types and that she has also had historically different power sources. Did anyone else as a child think that Aisha was the fairy of sports? Like, I remember having this deep held belief as a kid that she was the fairy of sports, and I was so certain that at one point Rainbow marketed her as the fairy of sports that I went and looked to see if they had actually done that. And this also kind of inspired this video because I was absolutely certain that Aisha has not always been the fairy of waves. Fairy of Waves is something that Nickelodeon created for her to have a specific power source, but I almost felt like her power source wasn't specifically defined very clearly early on, and I didn't find any proof of the fact that Rainbow had ever specifically said that Aisha is the fairy of sports, but I think I can understand where my confusion as a child came from, because when we look at old Winx fairy profiles, which we're gonna do today, and new ones, which we're also gonna do today, they really heavily emphasize Aisha's love for sports. And for a lot of fairies, their power source is directly related to their hobbies and the things that they love. Flora is the fairy of nature, and nature is very much her hobby as well. She loves plants, she loves growing them, she loves magical potions, all that stuff. Musa is the fairy of music, and obviously music is her inner passion as well. Tekna is the fairy of technology, and her hobbies are also related to technology. Stella's powers aren't so directly related to her hobbies. She's more interested in fashion, but her personality is very related to her powers, especially the sun. But I would also argue that maybe the moon. Like, she always tries to be happy and sunny and friendly on the outside, but she does have a sort of more mythical, kept hidden side that I would say sort of also carries her powers of the moon. I just recently talked about Stella getting her moon powers back, so if you wanna go check out that video, please do. So today we're gonna use a variety of sources. We're gonna mostly look at the information that was available on the winxclub.com website historically and the information that is available there now in different languages. I am gonna be using Google Translate for some parts of this video, and I am aware that Google Translate isn't by no means a perfect translation device, but I think for the purposes of this video, it's gonna give us the information that we want. So first off, I'm gonna show you guys some Reddit posts that we're gonna be using today. One of them is from r/Winx Club by Trading Drop 9283, and another one is this post by Merhuck on r/Winx Club. And I also found these Winx Club profiles that they found. They don't credit anyone in this post, I don't think. But I also found these Winx Club posts on this blog called magicwingsforever.blogspot.com. So I'm going to link this below as well, just in case this was the original place that found them. It's very likely that they just used archive and went back and found this stuff there. But today we're going to be looking at the fairies' profiles. But first I want to talk about the fact that Aisha in the Italian dub is the fairy of fluids. And in this post, they're not sure why the change was made, and they ask for any ideas. I was extremely certain, even before I started making this video, that Aisha has not been the fairy of waves forever. Like, she was a fairy of something else that wasn't as clearly defined before, and fairy of waves is a Nickelodeon thing. This person uses the Winx Club wiki, which I wouldn't say is a very trustworthy source. I don't personally trust the Winx Club wiki, so I went to the Italian Winx Club website. Let's just tell them about cookies. You can see that Aisha is the fairy of fluids. It says fate dei fluidi. Sorry if my pronunciation is awful, I don't speak Italian. But it definitely says the fairy of fluids, and I just put it through Google Translate just to be sure, and it definitely says that. So, why should the fairy of waves in English? Some people in this thread point out that the fairy of fluids sounds a little bit gross. Like, it sounds a little bit like bodily fluids, and it associates with lots of other things. Like, fairy of waves associates with the sea mainly, but fluids, so many things are fluids. Coffee is a fluid, tea is a fluid, blood is fluid. You know, when in Avatar there's waterbenders can technically also be bloodbenders. Well, that her being the fairy of fluids also opens up this possibility of her having like power over blood, if she has power over all fluids. And honestly, that kind of makes her OP. If she can reign over all fluids, then that is kind of really, really, really OP. So I think it's like the grossness factor possibly as well, that fairy of fluids sounds kind of iffy, but I also feel that making her fairy of fluids is sort of way OP. So I was really curious and I went to different Winx Club sites in different languages, the current winxclub.com website in different languages, because it said here that she's the fairy of water in German, for instance, and I wanted to double check that because I don't want Reddit to be my only source if possible. Also, about the fairy of fluids sounding kind of iffy, I think it sounds iffy in other languages as well. Like, I obviously don't speak all languages, but if we talk about Estonian, for instance, then vedelikuhaljas. Um, it doesn't sound as weird as fairy of fluids, but I definitely, especially if we put it like vedelikehaljas, which is all fluids instead of a fluid. Yeah, it definitely sounds like there are some weird connotations there in Estonian as well, and I feel like that's the case in a lot of other languages as well. But yeah, I went to the Winx Club website in different regions. I went to the Netherlands website, and in the Netherlands website, she's the fairy of waves. I translated that. Then in the Portuguese language, she's also the fairy of waves. So you'll be thinking, well, she's the fairy of waves everywhere. In Chinese, it didn't really say what she's the fairy of. They didn't have this article, and they didn't have this article in a lot of languages actually. But I wanted to show the Chinese side because I think it looks so different from the other ones, and I just thought that was an interesting side note. Um, then, interestingly, very interestingly, and I feel like German is a complete outlier here. In Germany, she's also called Layla, but like she's called Layla in Portuguese, and she's also called Layla in Dutch. And she's also called Layla in Netherlands. And I think Ingenieursgrafie would like the series to have uniformity and have her have the same name in all languages. But I still think that it's nicer that if she was already Aisha or if she was already Layla in one language, then let's keep her Layla. In German, she's the fairy of water. And Germany feels like a complete outlier in this regard. I don't think any other language makes her the fairy of water. Then we have Spanish. And in Spanish, she's no longer the fairy of waves. She is, in fact, she is Layla. So she's not Aisha like in the Italian dub, but she is the fairy of fluids, just like she is in the Italian dub. And in the Russian dub, she's also Layla. So in Russian, she's the fairy of liquids and fluids. So again, it matches the Italian dub, even though they made it two words. I'm not sure. Like, liquids and fluids are the same thing. Not all the languages available on the Winx Club website have this little article with her. Let's see if Turkey actually has that. Reject all. Oh, that Turkish has this little article as well. So let's see what she is in Turkish. Yeah, she's the fairy of waves. I also tried to find the Finnish one, and the Finnish website doesn't have the little article for Layla. But I speak Finnish, and I had a look at the Finnish episode, and she is the fairy of waves in this version. at least from the Nickelodeon era. So I was curious about the Estonian dub because that is my native language, and I checked, and she is called Aisha in the Estonian dub of season 7, which is the one I have the DVD for. And the Nickelodeon era one that I have, she was called Layla in the earlier seasons in Estonia, but we don't have consistency, I guess. And this one is like season 7 is translated based off English, so they use Aisha, and she is the fairy of waves here as well. So she is the fairy of waves in Estonian as well. This DVD also has Latvian, but I don't understand Latvian. But we can actually check whether or not she's called Aisha in Latvian. So she is called Aisha in the Latvian tab as well. I'm assuming she's gonna be the fairy of waves because this is based on the English tab, but I can't tell because the way she speaks isn't clear enough that I could write it out on Google or anything. But she does say Aisha. So she has different power sources now, depending on the dub. She is the fairy of fluids, she is the fairy of water, she's the fairy of liquids and fluids, she's the fairy of waves. She could be any of these. But what was she historically? This is where my video idea started and what I want to know. So I'm really glad that I've managed to find this Reddit post and Aisha's original bio. So here's what it says. Hey everyone, I'm Layla, the Liquid Fairy, the newcomer to the Winx Club. So she is the Liquid Fairy, originally in English as well. I was born on June 15th and my fairy sign is Chimera. I come from Andros, where I am the princess, where I am a princess. The Winx rescued me from Darker's clutches, and since then I've joined their cool group. I can use my special powers to manipulate Morphix, a special pink fluid which can take on any shape I want it to have. Once I perfect my skills at Althea College, I'll be able to control all liquids. So this, I think, is super interesting because it tells us that not only was Rainbow aware that making her the fairy of liquids would give her really OP powers, but they also like gave her safeguards. So I also remember thinking at one point that Aisha was the fairy of Morphix, and she actually pretty much is at that point because her powers help her to manipulate Morphix, which is something that she does a lot in the earlier seasons. Like in season 2, her first spells are all Morphix based, a special pink liquid which can take on any shape I want it to have. Once I perfect my skills at Althea College, I'll be able to control all fluids. So Aisha has this inherent possibility to become super OP. In my spare time, I love playing sports and I keep as fit as I can to stay in top form. I'm proud and determined. I'm always ready to face danger. However, I'm terrified of the dark and open spaces. I hope I'll become a true fairy and a great wings too. So yeah, this is what we find out from Aisha's original profile. And if we just go down here, we can also find her newer profiles from season 3. And if we look at her season 3 profile, here we can see, first off, here we can see that the Winx Club website used to have so many typos. Best friend should be 2 words. She does not dress in her favorite color at all. And her favorite hobby is sports. I think these stats or these like knowledge pieces are really, really interesting because they're not talked about much. Like, I didn't remember Aisha loving horses. But yeah, her favorite spell is Morphix, and Morphix is really important to her. And but here in this season 3 bio, we don't talk about her being the fairy of liquids anymore. Interestingly, here in this old screenshot, it says Aisha here, and here it says hello, I'm Layla. It's her birthday, her fairy sign. So here in this, we no longer talk about Aisha's powers. And if we go to the season 4 bio, I believe this one is just like exactly the same. Yeah, this one is exactly the same. Even the daily dip is exactly the same. All of these things are exactly the same. They have fixed the typo, good on them. She actually has a favorite subject now, which is interesting. But her favorite spell is still morphic. So, and here they have also fixed, she says Layla here and Layla here. So I think that it's really interesting that Aisha was originally in the English dub considered the Fairy of Fluids as well. If you go to the official Winx Club channel and look at Aisha's new transformation, here we talk about her power of waves as well. And they actually use wave imagery very clearly in this version. But I remember Aisha not having such a specific emphasis on waves and there being all fluids. I think it would be really interesting if they had leaned into the fluids thing because they clearly thought about it. Like, she clearly wasn't the fairy of waves. But then by season 4, she does feel more like a water fairy. I'm not at all mad at the German dub for her making her the fairy of water, even though that's a little bit weird because no one else does that. But I get where they're coming from. Like, if you look at Aisha's Believix, it does look very much like she's the water fairy at that point. I think this also kind of shows that maybe Rainbow didn't think things through with Layla or Aisha as much as they should have. I mean, we can sort of see by the fact that she was originally supposed to be Gladys, then she was supposed to be Layla, then she changed it to Aisha, but because it was too late, she was going to be Layla in some of the dubs. And she's still Layla in some of the dubs. I like the Finnish dub as well, she's also Layla in. And I actually like that they have kept that. So that's the history of Aisha's powers. She is originally a fluid fairy in the English dub as well. And I think it's really interesting that they changed that and that they are apparently now going with the change, even though they might go back with Stella and make her the fairy of the sun and the moon again. Her power source, I think, was never mentioned in 4Kids, so if you grew up with that, this is Shifting Tides in the theme song, but I don't think they ever established her power. And I think, yeah, I think this problem really came to be when the Wings started shouting out their power sources at the transformations, because then they needed to define it, and they hadn't really defined it as clearly before. Aisha was mainly defined through her love of sports, and she still is defined through her love of sports a lot. If you go to the official Winx Club website now, we can see that, she's very heavily in love with sports. Here they have a little bit of surfing as well, but she seems to love all kinds of sports. And if you listen to old team songs, then she also talks about her love of sports in like Siamole Winx and the Winx on tour. What do you think of Aisha's powers? Let me know what Aisha is in your native dub, or the dub that you grew up with, or the dub that you just like the most, or that if you have any more interesting facts. A lot of my commenters have left some interesting additional facts in my comments recently, and I really appreciate it. What do you think? What kind of fairy Aisha should be? Should we keep her as the fairy of waves? Does that make more sense? Or is the fairy of fluids cooler? I think that makes her very OP. But yeah, if you enjoy listening to me talk about Winx Club or Winx Club content in general, make sure to subscribe. I do other kinds of content as well. I do convention related content and Japanese fashion related content. If you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave it a like. And if you have any more video ideas you'd like to see me do, let me know in the comments below. And until then, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!